Hey everybody, it's Mr. Carr again. Today we're going to be talking about 12.5, Law of Cosines. So this is kind of similar to our Law of Sines, but obviously it's cosine, so it's different. Okay. So the biggest thing is we're going to learn how to use our Law of Cosines, but also make sure we understand which method to solve our triangles. Okay. So first thing is, what is the Law of Cosines? If you do not have an angle side pair, so remember that's like an angle on the side that's across from it, you cannot use Law of Sines. Okay, so that's when we have to use law of cosines. These are three different ones, but they're all the same thing. Okay, a squared, b squared, c squared. It just depends on what you're looking at that. So just like always, a is across from a, b is across from b, c is across from angle c there. Okay, if we say a squared, so let's say we want to use it in terms of this a. That means we know cosine of a, but we don't know this value of a. So if we know b and c, for example, okay, that's when I would use this. Now I like to look at the pattern here. If it's a squared, it's cosine of a. B squared, cosine of b, c squared, cosine of c. Everything, everything else is in the, like we got the b squared plus c squared. That's the other two that's not a squared. And it's also b and c again. So -2 times bc cosine a. Same thing here. B squared is here. A squared and c squared are the other two. And then a and c are both in that part. That's kind of the pattern here. So they're all the same thing. It's just depending on which variable you want to look at. But I like to look at that pattern on that case. So for our first case, here's one where we have a given triangle with two sides and the included angle. So here's 73. We don't have that we don't have that angle pair for that side C. Okay. So in this case, I'm going to use the C squared is equal to a squared plus b squared minus 2ab times the cosine of C. Okay, so I have A is 7 and then B is 10 here. I got everything I need. So we're just going to go plug those in. So C squared is equal to 7 squared plus, where am I at? Sorry, 7 squared plus 10 squared minus 2 times 7 times 10 times the cosine of 73. Okay, so I like to do this where I will simplify certain things together because I don't want to get anything confused. So what I mean by that is take care of the exponents first, then this will all be taken care of by itself. So 7 squared is 49, 10 squared is 100, and then 2 times 7 times 10 is going to be a negative 140 times the cosine of 73. Okay, these two can go together. I have 149, and then I'm just going to plug in, negative 140 times the cosine of 73. So negative 140 times the cosine of 73, and that gives me 2. So I should do this. I should just do the without the negative sign. Okay, I'm gonna do just the negative. Yeah, just the 140 times cosine 73. When I do that, I get a negative 103.067. Since I'm subtracting that, that turns into a positive now. So I can add that to the 149. Okay, so I'll take that plus the 149 gives me 252.067, and then square root that, so I get the C value, which is going to be, and again, I'm doing this on my calculator so I don't round until the very end. So 15 point, we'll go with 88 for our purposes here, since we don't have it. All right, now it says to solve the triangle. That means we need to find angle A and angle B as well. Now that I have side C, I can now have an angle side pair. So that means I could set this up with law of sines. So I'll start with law of cosines to get my one side. And then I can do, if I want to find angle A, so I'll do sine of A divided by 7 is equal to the sine of 73 divided by my 15.88. Can multiply both sides by 7 here. So that's gone. The sine of A is equal to 7 sine 73 divided by 15.88. And then since I'm solving for an angle, I'm going to do my inverse sine. So this is what's going to go in my calculator. 7 sine 73 over 15.88. Now again, this part right here, the 15.88, that's the rounded version from here. Try to use it in your calculator. So when you go through, you're going to do 7 times sine 73. Then when you do the division part, make sure you go back, like kind of arrow up to your calculator and use that 15.88 number. Okay, so that means for angle A, I'm going to have inverse sine of 7 times sine of 73 divided by my 15.88 number. And whoops. I might have to change some stuff because I'm sorry, yeah. I made a mistake earlier because I had mine in radians. Don't forget your calculator mode's got to be the correct spot. Yeah, so that changes. I'm sorry. Let me go ahead and fix some of this stuff. This should not have been this number here. It's actually 149 minus, if I do the 140 times cosine 73, I'll come out to 40.932. So that means when I subtract this, so I've got 149 minus that number, I get 108.068. And then when I square root that, I get 10.39396, we'll say 396 for now. Okay, so process is good, but I had the wrong mode. My bad. So that means that instead of 15.88, I'm going to do the same exact thing as before, but I'm going to have the 10.396 underneath. Okay, so everything still stays the same in terms of my work. Just make sure you're in degrees so you get the correct numbers there. So I'm going to go ahead and do my inverse sine of 7 times the sine of 73 divided by my 10.396. I get 40.09 degrees. Okay, now I don't have to do law of sines again to find angle B. We have two angles, so I'm just going to do the measure of angle B is equal to 180 minus 73 minus 40.09. So the measure of angle B is going to be 180 minus all that, and I get 66 point, let's go with 91 degrees. Okay, so I have all my missing pieces now. I have side C, angle A, angle B. All right. The other time to use law of cosines is if I actually have no angle measurements at all. So if you have a triangle with 3 sides, again, I don't have a angle side pair. Okay, so I have to find my one of my missing angles. To make this as easy as possible, always solve for the longest, use the longest side first. So in this case, I'm going to use angle C. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and write that down. That's C squared is equal to A squared plus B squared minus 2AC cosine of C. Because I'm looking for that angle C, it might help if I want to change this formula and rewrite it in terms of C. So I can have something that I just plug into my formula. So for example, I will subtract A squared and B squared over to both sides. So C squared minus A squared minus B squared equals a negative 2AC cosine C. Let's divide both sides by negative 2AC. Okay, you can leave it in that format, but because I'm dividing by a negative number here, then I could turn all of my numerators into opposite signs. So for example, that'll look like this. It'll be A squared plus B squared minus C squared all over 2AC is equal to the cosine of C. So then for my last part of this, I can actually do inverse cosine of A squared plus B squared minus C squared all over 2AC. This is what is going to go in my calculator. So I'm going to put in the A, B, and C's in their correct spots, and then I can do the inverse cosine. So I can just do it all as one big step. So again, up to my triangle here, this is A, this is C, and this is B. Okay, so that means I'm going to go ahead and do that. I've got C is equal to the inverse cosine. There'll be A squared, so that's be 9 squared plus 7 squared minus 12 squared all over 2 times 9 times 7. Okay, so I just plug it all in my calculator all at once. So I got inverse cosine will be 9 squared plus 7 squared minus 12 squared divided by 2 times 9 times 7. Okay, I do that and I get 96 point, we'll go with 38 degrees here. Okay, so I found my first angle. Now I have my angle side pair with the 12 and the 96.38. So I can do law of sines now. So if I do that, I'll do angle A. Okay. We're out of space here, so let's try. Okay, so I'll just do the sine of A divided by 9 is equal to the sine of 96.38 divided by 12. And again, I'm not going to do the rounded version, 96.38. I'm going to arrow up on my calculator to use that. So multiply both sides by 9. So that's sine of A is equal to 9 times the sine of 96.38 all over 12. So A is going to be the inverse sine of all of that. 9 times the sine, 96.38 over 12. Okay. So A comes out as inverse sine 9 times sine of that divided by 12. So A comes out as 48.19 degrees. And as always, since I'm dealing with the triangle, to find angle B, just take 180 minus all the other two. So I can take, for the measure of angle B, is 180 minus 96.38 minus 48.19. Okay, so 180 minus that, and I get 35.43 degrees. Okay, so that is law of cosine. So again, two cases where we want to use that. We're going to use it if we have the angle in between two sides, or if we have all three sides and we don't have any angles. So we're going to do law of cosines. Feel free if you want to use this as like its own formula right here. And that means everything changes in terms of A and B. But all I did was just change, like I took this right here and solved it for C. So we're doing that inverse cosine. Okay. Here's a word problem that we're going to cover real quick. Two pilots in a stationary airplane look 38 degrees to the left. So that's this one right here. And see a bus that's 75 feet away. They look 28 degrees to the right. And see a truck that's 110 feet away. That's this one right here. How far apart are the bus and truck? So that's what I'm looking for is there. Okay. So if I add up the 38 and 28, I get 66 degrees total. Okay. This is just like my side angle side idea. So that means that this is going to be my x squared. Well, it's not a lot of space here, but x squared is equal to, I don't know, we'll call this, because it's across from the truck. Well, this is the distance to the bus. This is the distance to the truck. Okay. Basically, it's going to be x squared is equal to b squared plus t squared minus 2 times b times t times the cosine of, called p for pilots. Okay. So now I can just plug that in. I got x squared is equal to b squared. So it's 75 squared plus 110 squared minus 2 times 75 times 110. Running out of space again. Let's just come down here with that. Times the cosine of 66. Okay. So because of my limited space, I'm just going to kind of shortcut a little bit. 75 squared plus 110 squared is going to give me 725. So I got 2 times 75 times 110 times the cosine of 66. Gives me minus here 6,711.15. So I combine those two to 11,013.8. And then I square root both. So my distance x, it doesn't say what I want to round to, but I get, let's go to 2 decimal places. X is equal to 104.95 feet. Okay. So one last recap just to make sure we're clear. We can do law of sines if we have 2 angles and any sides. Okay. Because if we have 2 angles, we can find the third angle. So we're guaranteed to have an opposite angle. If we have 2 sides and an angle that's opposite one of them, then we could also do law of sines. If we have 2 sides and their included angle, we have to do law of cosines. And if we ever have 3 sides, it has to be law of cosines. So that's what you are going to look at on your own, is choosing which one of those you're going to use. Okay. So it's always based on what's given and what you're looking for. All right, that's it for law of cosines. So we'll take care on this one. Have a good one.